People lie with their mouths, but their reactions always betray them. Every handshake, every compliment, every favor, every apology, it's all a move on the chessboard. Most people miss this. They cling to the illusion that honesty lives in words. Machiavelli knew better. He understood that words are costumes, but instinct is the naked truth. And instinct always slips out when people think no one's watching. That's where power lies. Not in listening to what someone says, but in watching what they do when the mask falls for just a second. Because no matter how polished they are, no matter how carefully they manage their image, they cannot fake their core reactions. That's why Machiavelli didn't just observe people passively. He tested them. He created pressure points, quiet traps, subtle setups that forced instinct to reveal itself. Hidden envy, false loyalty, buried resentment, greed, it all leaks out under the right stress. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. This isn't about playing detective. It's about running surgical experiments on human behavior, calmly, quietly, and then watching without interference. Because when you do, the mask cracks. Let's begin. Test number 1, the celebration test. You share good news, a promotion, praise, an opportunity. You tell the people closest to you, and naturally they smile. They nod. They say all the right words, but their eyes will betray them. The very first, unfiltered flash of emotion is the truth. Is it joy, or is it discomfort? Real friends light up instantly, with no delay. Fake allies hesitate. Their smile lags a beat behind their voice, as if they had to download their reaction from memory. They check the room before committing to their response, and that half-second delay tells you everything. They don't fear your failure. They fear your rise. Test number 2, the denied favor test. This one is devastating in its simplicity. You ask for something small, something you know they can give with ease. A ride, a little feedback, a small connection. Then, before they even respond, you pull it back. Actually, never mind. I figured it out. And you watch. If their face relaxes a little too quickly, if their voice suddenly sounds lighter, that's not relief. It's revelation. They were never going to help you. They were already preparing their excuse. But now, since you've given them an out, their mask slips. That tiny lift in energy shows you exactly how much you could have counted on them. Not at all. These people were never safety nets. They were weights dressed in politeness. Test number 3, the credit split test. This one is for collaborators, teammates, anyone tied to your success. You give them the chance to shine, to take credit, to share in the win. You even compliment them first, and then you listen. Do they share it back? Do they say, "We did great," or "Honestly, I followed your lead"? Or do they quietly reframe the story so they become the hero? Do they say, "Yeah, I worked really hard to push this through," or worse, say nothing at all? Silence here is the dead giveaway, because in their head, they're already rewriting the narrative. And in that rewrite, you're just a footnote. People who can't share credit don't want partners. They want rungs on their ladder, and one day, they'll step on you. Test number 4, the small disagreement test. This one feels harmless. You casually disagree. You say, "Actually, I see it differently," or "I'm not sure I agree, but interesting point." Then you watch. Do they ask why? Do they explore your perspective? Or do they immediately push back harder, mocking your view, raising their voice, withdrawing their warmth? Do they smile with their mouth but tighten their jaw? Pay attention, because this is a test of ego containment. People who can't handle the smallest disagreement will punish you when the stakes are real. They don't want equals, they want mirrors. And if you're not reflecting their ego back to them, you'll become their enemy sooner or later. These first 4 tests don't just expose reactions. They expose worldviews. How someone handles your rise, a denied favor, shared credit, or small resistance. That's who they are. That's their blueprint. And Machiavelli never waited for betrayal to hit him in the chest. He forced the truth to surface early. Because once you've seen someone clearly, you can never unsee them. And yet, we're only halfway through. There are 3 more Machiavellian tests, each one sharper than the last. The kind that not only reveal hidden motives, but flip the power dynamic before the other person even realizes what's happening. The genius of Machiavelli wasn't just that he could spot lies. It was that he could draw out truth before people were ready to show it. He didn't sit around waiting for betrayal. He engineered little earthquakes, controlled disruptions that forced instinct to come to the surface. That's where the next test begins. Test number 5. The delayed response test. This one is about timing. You send a message, something important, something that matters to you. Then you wait. Not anxiously, not out of insecurity, but with cold observation. How long do they take to reply? Do they treat your words as a priority, or do they push you down the list? And here's the real signal. Compare how they respond when you need them versus when they need something from you. If they're slow to answer when you reach out but lightning fast when it's their agenda, the truth is clear. You're not a connection. You're a tool. Machiavelli understood that slowness is not always disrespect, but when it's consistent, when it only shows up in one direction, that's not chance. It's calculation. And once you see it, you adjust. You stop giving urgency to people who give you delay. You stop making yourself available to people who ration out their presence like currency. Because someone who keeps you waiting isn't building partnership. They're keeping you slightly beneath them, slightly needy, so they can remain slightly superior. Test number 6, the public praise test. This one is gold. Praise someone publicly. Lift them up in front of others. Acknowledge their strength, their talent. Then watch what happens next. Do they redirect the spotlight back to you? Do they acknowledge your role? Or do they soak it all in, acting like the moment belongs to them alone? Do they get louder, more dominant, as if your praise was a stepping stool for their ego? This test matters because people act differently when there's an audience. Private gratitude is easy. Public reciprocity is the true measure of intent. If they can't share the stage in front of others, if they take your gift of recognition and twist it into their solo, then they've already shown you something dangerous. They don't see you as a partner. They see you as a spotlight operator, useful only as long as you shine on them. And when that's the case, Machiavelli would cut off the attention supply instantly. Why? Because someone who hogs the stage today will try to push you off it tomorrow. Test number 7, the controlled disadvantage test. This is the sharpest test of all. You give someone a small upper hand deliberately. You let them win an argument. You agree to their terms in a deal. You let them think they've gotten one over on you. And then you wait. Good people, people with genuine intentions, use that moment to protect the relationship. They feel grateful. They reassure you. They recognize the grace you just extended. But those with darker motives, they lean in. They escalate. They taste control and immediately want more. To them, your grace wasn't generosity. It was weakness, and weakness is a signal. Take more. Machiavelli used this tactic constantly in court. He would pretend to lose just to see who transformed into a tyrant the moment they thought he wasn't looking. Because true power isn't revealed when someone is losing. It's revealed when they're winning. And here's the thing. These 7 tests don't require force. They don't require confrontation. They require calm, disciplined observation. You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't accuse. You create the space, and you let instinct do the rest. And instinct will always betray the mask. By now, you can already feel the shift. Once you start seeing these patterns, once you start noticing the hesitation in a smile, the too quick relief after a denied favor, the way someone rewrites credit in real time, you can't go back to blindness. People reveal themselves constantly. The tragedy is that most people don't pay attention. Machiavelli's brilliance was in turning everyday moments into laboratories of truth. And when you start using these tests, you'll see the same thing he did. The world divides quickly between those who can handle your rise and those who can't. Between those who see you as an equal and those who see you as leverage. Between those who value your presence and those who only value your usefulness. But here's the real Machiavellian twist. Spotting the truth is only half the game. What do you do once you know? Once someone fails the test, once they expose envy, disloyalty, entitlement, what's your next move? This is where strategy begins. Because if you react emotionally, if you confront them outright, you've already lost. You've alerted them. You've given them a new mask to build. Power isn't in exposure. Power is in what you quietly do with that exposure. And that's exactly what we'll break down next. So you've run the tests. You've watched carefully. And now you know. Someone's reaction gave them away. Their envy leaked through their smile. Their relief betrayed their politeness. Their silence during public praise revealed their ego. The question now is, what do you do with that information? This is where most people fail. The instinct is to confront, to cut ties, to warn others, to react. But Machiavelli would tell you that's the worst move you can make. Why? Because the moment you reveal you've seen through their mask, you give them a new script to follow. You alert them. And the manipulator who knows they've been exposed will simply build another layer of disguise. You don't want that. You want predictability. And predictability requires ignorance. Their ignorance. So, here's the Machiavellian way forward. Step 1. Change nothing immediately. On the outside, you remain calm, even warm. You don't confront. You don't pull back suddenly. Internally, though, you've already marked them. You've shifted them from ally to risk. But outwardly, you keep the frame steady. Nothing disarms a manipulator more than your calm, your smile, your continued presence, after you've already removed them from your inner circle in your mind. You let them keep dancing, unaware that you've quietly cut the strings. Step 2. Shift from investment to extraction. Before the test, you might have invested in them, time, trust, energy, resources. Now you stop. You don't cut them off immediately. That's noisy. Instead, you change the flow. You move from giving to taking. You ask, what can I still learn from this person? What can I observe? What leverage can I quietly extract while giving nothing new away? This isn't cruelty. It's preservation. A person who shows you false loyalty once will do it again. The only question is whether you let them cost you again, or whether you turn them into a case study, a lesson, even a resource for as long as it serves you. Step 3. Redesign their role. Not everyone who fails a test needs to be thrown out of your world. Some can still be useful, just in different positions. Maybe you keep them close, but only to feed them limited information. Maybe you pair them with more loyal allies to dilute their influence. Maybe you isolate their access to your plans while keeping the relationship civil. Machiavelli rarely burned bridges outright. He knew positioning was often more powerful than punishment. A backstabber who thinks they're still in your circle is far easier to manage than one who knows they've been cut. Why? Because the unaware enemy keeps talking. They keep leaking their motives, thinking you're blind. And that ignorance is your leverage. Step 4. Use their failure to reinforce your frame. Every test that someone fails is ammunition for you, not to attack them, but to refine your strategy. You now know who to trust less, who to keep at a distance, who to deprioritize, who never to rely on again. That knowledge makes your world sharper. No more, maybe they didn't mean it. No more, maybe they'll change. The Machiavellian doesn't deal in hope. He deals in patterns. Once someone reveals themselves, you believe them. You adjust accordingly. Step 5. Begin future interactions with subtle power markers. This is where everything changes. You don't confront, but you shift how you move. You stop giving excessive validation. You stop over-explaining. You stop indulging their need for ego strokes. You become harder to read, harder to predict, harder to manipulate. You answer less. You smile less. You give fewer signals. Your calm neutrality becomes unnerving. And now, the manipulator starts to wonder, what happened? Did I lose my grip? Why do things feel different? That paranoia eats at them. And the best part? You haven't accused them of anything. You've just stopped giving them what they wanted in the first place. This is the true Machiavellian pivot. You don't need to expose anyone. Exposure is emotional. Exposure is reactive. Instead, you quietly restructure the game so that they can never touch you the same way again. And because they don't know what you've seen, they don't know how to adapt. They're stuck, still playing a role that you've already outgrown. But let's make something very clear. These tests aren't for the insecure. They're not for drama chasers. They're for builders. For those creating a life too valuable to let soft enemies and false friends bleed them dry. Every person near your time, your mind, your work. Every one of them can shift your direction. That's why testing matters. Because if you don't test, you gamble. And if you gamble with the wrong people, you lose more than trust, you lose years. And that's what comes next. Once you've seen someone clearly, once you know who they are under pressure, you face a decision. Do they get to stay in any capacity, or do you quietly start erasing them from your strategy? In the next section, we'll break down the doctrine, the permanent rules Machiavelli used after exposure. Because clarity is only step 1. Step 2 is making sure that clarity never becomes a liability. Once you've seen someone clearly, everything changes. You can't unknow it. You can't go back to giving them the same trust, the same access, the same benefit of the doubt. The mask is gone, and once it's gone forever. The question now is, how do you handle them from this point forward without losing your advantage? This is where Machiavelli's doctrine of exposure comes into play. It's not just about seeing the truth. It's about making sure that truth becomes permanent leverage, not wasted knowledge. Rule 1. Never reveal that you were testing them. This is the most important rule. People hate being exposed, but they fear being outmaneuvered. If someone realizes you ran a test on them and they failed, they will respond in one of 2 ways. They'll beg for re-entry through emotional manipulation, or they'll retaliate to reassert dominance. Either way, you've lost your edge. So don't give them that chance. Let them believe they fooled you. Let them live in the illusion that you never noticed. Why? Because in that illusion, they remain predictable. And predictability is leverage. Rule 2. Close the leaks. Ask yourself, what do they know about you? What habits, weaknesses, routines, secrets, or ambitions have they seen? What could they talk about behind your back that still has power? Once you know, you act. You change your rhythm. You stop giving them sensitive information. You stop inviting them into your planning. You cut off emotional access. You don't ghost them. You don't make a scene. You simply seal the leaks. This isn't revenge, it's risk management. You're making sure they never have the chance to use what they know against you. Rule 3. Freeze their influence without breaking the frame. You don't have to declare war to neutralize someone. You just stop feeding the connection. You respond slower. You cut the warmth out of your tone. You give short answers. You turn down their invitations politely. You don't block them. You become distant, formal, brief. They'll feel it. They'll sense something's different, but they won't be able to name it. And that's the point. Because if they can't name it, they can't fight it. Eventually, they'll withdraw on their own, not because you pushed them out, but because you stopped giving them oxygen. Rule 4. Use the pattern as a filter. Every person who fails one of your tests gives you more than their truth. They give you a pattern to recognize in others. Was it envy when you succeeded? Was it relief when you retracted a favor? Was it silence during public praise? Was it greed when you let them win? Whatever it was, now you know exactly what to look for next time. The next time you meet someone new, you can introduce small triggers early, and if they fail, you never open the door again. Machiavelli scaled his power not by trusting more people, but by trusting fewer, faster. Rule 5. Reserve your full self for the rare few who pass. This is where people make the mistake of sliding into paranoia. They get addicted to testing, exposing, isolating until they're alone in a castle of suspicion. That's not Machiavellian. That's self-sabotage. Machiavelli still had allies, still had partners, still had an inner circle, but only after they survived the fire of testing. When someone passes your tests consistently over time, you open yourself, slowly, strategically, but genuinely. Because power is not isolation. Power is precision access. You only let the right people in. And when they prove themselves, they multiply your strength. Once you lock in these rules, the world looks different. You stop giving trust away like candy. You stop hoping people will show loyalty they've never earned. You stop reacting to words, and you start responding to patterns. And the result? Your circle shrinks, but it hardens. Your alliances get smaller, but stronger. And your mind, for the first time, feels bulletproof. This is why Machiavelli thrived in a world of liars, opportunists, and traitors. He didn't need to avoid them. He didn't need to fight them head-on. He simply turned their behavior into data and then reshaped his strategy around that data. He became untouchable not because he had no enemies, but because he never let his enemies get close enough to strike. But here's the final layer. Once you start seeing the truth, once you start applying the doctrine, you have to make sure you don't misuse it. Because exposure is a gift, but it's also a burden. If you don't channel it with discipline, you'll end up consumed by suspicion. And that's the one trap Machiavelli would never forgive. So in the last section, we'll break down the final shift. How to move through the world once you've seen the masks slip. How to live in permanent clarity without becoming paranoid. And how to turn exposure into power that scales for a lifetime. By now, you understand the tests. You know how to watch without interfering. You know how to let instinct betray the mask. You know how to process the results without confrontation, how to freeze influence without noise, how to reposition people without alerting them. But the real question is this. How do you live once you've seen it all? How do you carry permanent clarity without letting it rot into paranoia? This is where Machiavelli's final rules come in. They aren't just tactics for dealing with one or two false friends. They're principles for building a life where betrayal never blindsides you again. Let's break them down. Rule 1. Exposure stays private. Never announce that you've seen through someone. Never let them know you were testing. The moment you reveal your cards, you hand them the ability to build a new mask. People will either manipulate harder or lash out to regain power. Instead, let them keep believing they got away with it. That false confidence keeps them predictable. And predictability is priceless. Rule 2. Contain the damage. Once someone shows their true intent, you immediately cut off what they can use. You change your disclosures. You stop revealing future moves. You limit what they see of your habits, your emotions, your vulnerabilities. You don't punish them. You starve them of fuel. Machiavelli knew most enemies don't need to be fought. They just need to be cut off from the resources they once took for granted. Rule 3. Quietly freeze the bond. When you respond slower, when you smile less, when you give fewer signals, something happens. The relationship doesn't explode, it evaporates. They can't name the shift, but they feel it. They sense they're no longer central, no longer trusted, no longer relevant, and eventually they withdraw. Not because you pushed them out, but because you gave them nothing left to feed on. Rule 4. Turn exposure into a filter. Every failed test sharpens your instincts. Every envy, every hesitation, every betrayal of gratitude, it all becomes a data point. You don't just learn about one person, you learn about people. And the next time you meet someone new, you test earlier. You create the same setups, the same little triggers. If they pass, you open the door slightly. If they fail, the door never moves again. That's how Machiavelli scaled his empire of trust, not by believing more people, but by filtering faster. Rule 5. Keep space for the rare few who pass. Don't fall into the trap of total isolation. The goal isn't to see everyone as a snake. It's to identify the snakes before they bite. And once someone shows they can survive the fire, once they pass the celebration test, the credit test, the disadvantage test, you give them something rare. Measured openness. Not naive trust, but earned access. Because true power isn't found in solitude. It's found in precision, knowing exactly who belongs close and exactly who doesn't. And here's the final truth. Once you see someone clearly, you can never unsee them. You can smile at them. You can play civil. You can even collaborate for a while longer. But inside, you know. And that knowledge quietly rewires the power dynamic. Where once you reacted to their words, now you respond to their patterns. Where once they had space in your life by default, now they must earn every inch. And that shift, that's permanent. Machiavelli lived in courts full of liars, opportunists, sycophants. He didn't run from them. He didn't waste time exposing them publicly. He used them until they had nothing left to give. Then he vanished. Not with noise, but with precision. That's how he survived. That's how he thrived. And now, it's your turn. You know the 7 tests. You know the doctrine that follows them. You know how to adjust silently, surgically, without warning. Exposure isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about building a network that doesn't drain you, a circle that multiplies your strength instead of bleeding it dry, a mind that no longer gambles loyalty on masks and words. Here's the cycle. Expose, observe, adjust, repeat. Do it calmly, do it quietly, do it without emotion. And soon, you'll notice something. Life gets quieter, cleaner, sharper. You'll stop being blindsided. You'll stop being drained. And you'll stop giving your energy to people who only ever offered performance. That's how you rise quietly. That's how you become untouchable. Not because you have no enemies, but because you never let them close enough to strike. So remember this. Exposure is a gift. What you do with it, that's power.